Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. We are getting ready to head out to the next BPT event on Lake Eufaula out in Oklahoma. Oh boy, guys, we've been home for a couple of days and that's about it. We're turning around, going to a fishery that should be a pretty interesting one. Could a jig head minnow forward-facing sonar combination win? Maybe. I think there'll be guys that do catch some fish that way. But from my experience there last year, at roughly the same time, I don't think that that's going to be the dominating factor. I think there will be a couple of guys doing it. I think there'll be a lot of guys using forward-facing sonar, whether they're searching out brush piles or fishing around docks, fishing for isolated fish. I think that very much could happen. But I think you're going to see a little bit of everything. One cool thing about Lake Eufaula is that it fishes in a lot of different manners. You could probably go there and do almost anything that you want to do. Plus, it's got a fishable population of smallmouth, spotted bass, and largemouth. So from that standpoint, it's going to really be open up. Plus, for us, being catch, weigh, release, it's a minimum 1.5 pound requirement. So you're going to see spotted bass play. You're going to see numbers of largemouth. Man, this is one I don't know what to expect from a weight standpoint. When I was there last year, I finished right around 20th. Had a good finish. Didn't catch a pile of fish, though. You know, I fished shallow, generally more in dirty water. And from that standpoint, you know, I don't feel like you're fishing for the same number of bites that you'd be fishing for if you stayed on the clear end. The clear end seemed to have a lot more fish. So I think the clear end will probably dominate this event. And because of that, the choice of baits could be almost anything. It really is endless. So I've got my baits here that I rigged up that I want to kind of walk through a handful of them. It's not everything, but I've already got probably 12 rods laid out here. And that's one of the things that I really don't like about going to like northern fisheries. Now, Eufaula is not a northern fishery, but if you go to a northern fishery where you have both largemouth and smallmouth, you kind of have a whole ton of different rods rigged up. I would so much rather go to a place like Okeechobee where I feel like you give me 4 or 5 rods, I'm good to go all day. But when you go to a place like Lake Eufaula, where you've got all 3 species of bass, you have everything from really clear water to pretty much mud. It just makes the choices of baits endless. So a lot of this is going off what I had success on last year, what I know some guys had success on last year as well that I wasn't doing. So we're going to kind of walk through a bunch of these different baits. Overall, I'm excited for this event, but if I had to give an early weight prediction, I think you're going to be looking probably to make the top 10, you're probably looking for 40 pounds a day. You know, to me, that's saying you're going to need probably about 20 scoreable bass a day. So if you catch 20 pound-and-a-halfers, you're looking at 30 pounds. You catch some 3s, 4s mixed in because there's a lot of really nice fish, you're probably looking at 40 pounds a day. To get a check, you're probably looking at, kind of what it's been all year. 25 pounds a day is, roughly a good number, I think. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. This is one of those things, though, where you get a weather front or something pulls through and it could change things up. So let's just dive right into some of these baits in no particular order. I got a pile of rods here. I'm just going to grab the top one and kind of move on. Okay, so the first one I've got here, a Strike King Hybrid Hunter. This is just going to be a perfect lake for your crankbaits, your shallow running cranks, deep if you want to too. But this lake has a lot of rock transitions, a lot of isolated rock piles, a lot of individual boulders, and a crankbait was a big player last time. I expect a crankbait to be a player this time. Allows you to cover a lot of water. You can generate a decent number of bites. So from that standpoint, I definitely think a crankbait. So I've got the Hybrid Hunter, which will be really for fishing some of those shallower flats, some of those shallower tapering points, because there's a lot of long points too that are kind of your pea gravel clay points that seem like they extend out into the lake forever. So a shallow running crank like that, we'll try to keep it to power fishing versus shallow fishing. So I've got the Berkeley Spin Rocket tied on. This will be a top water player for me. You know, again, I haven't even looked to see what the water level is. I'm assuming there'll be water in the bushes. If there's water in the bushes, you know, there was a lot of shallow cover there. I do think there'll still be a handful of fish that are spawning, a handful of fish that are fry ball guarding, and a top water like that Spin Rocket, one of my absolute favorites. So if I get into an area where I think maybe there's some spawning activity going on, that'll be a bait I throw. There's probably also going to be a shad spawn going on. I know that was going on a little bit last time. Now, the one thing with the BPT, we go out at 8 o'clock, or we start at 8 o'clock. So there's potential you're going to miss the shad spawn, but you got to have a spinner bait tied on. This is one that I've been having a lot of good success with. I've just got a straight tail hog farmer spunk shad on the back. So I do think you're going to have that. Another bait to cover some water, your lipless crankbaits. So in this case, I've just got a ghost colored Excalibur discontinued XRK 50, the old one knocker. I think that's going to be another one where you can kind of do a little bit of everything. You can kind of play a little shad spawn. You can cover a lot of water, fish some of those shallow flats. Just a good bait to generate strikes again. Cover a lot of water. I've got here, which one is this? That's the Kitech tungsten casting jig. So just a small jig, little 3-inch pit boss as the trailer. You know, again, fishing around rock, you guys know I like to throw the tungsten jigs in that case. I have a little spotty round ball jig, a Picasso little spotty tied on as well. And I've also got do I have it here? I've got a tungsten football jig tied on too. So that's another one. I think a jig will be a good player there. It always seems to be a good player there. So we've got that. Last year when I was there, I caught a bunch of fish throwing old Goldilocks. So I expect there to be potential for a swim jig bite again, whether that's just fishing shallow rock, throwing it a laydown, skipping under a dock. A swim jig is just a really good bait to generate strikes. And again, for spotted bass, smallmouth, and largemouth, all going to be a major player. Now, I will say, the last time we were there were only a handful of smallmouth weighed in. What I understand about the population is there are some giants, but there's not that many of them left anymore. It seems like they haven't had real good reproduction lately. So from that standpoint, I'm not expecting to see many. I think I caught 1 or 2 short ones last time there, but there wasn't a whole lot weighed in from what I recall. We've got this guy, the Dime 6 by Berkeley. That's the red swamp crawler, I believe is the name of the color. One of my favorites. You're fishing a fishery that's going to have definitely some mud mixed in. So I like to have a real bright red color crank. Still the springtime. That's one that last year, myself as well as Chris Grow, who I was rooming with, had quite a bit of success on. So I definitely am throwing that guy back on. Gotta have the Ozark Rig. So if you recall, last year when I finished 20th, I caught a bunch of my fish throwing the 1/8 ounce 3/0 core tackle weedless hover rig. And it worked very well for that. So I do have one of those rigged on too, but I've also got a couple of sizes of Ozark rigged up, which gives me a very similar presentation to the hover rig, but allows me to fish it in a Texas rig weedless style. So I've got several rigged up. The Creature Hog, the Berkeley Maxent Creature Hog, caught my fish for me last time on the hover rig. So I've got that on both hover rigs as well as Ozark rigs. Actually really looking forward to that, because that Ozark rig will shine in those shallow, like it really shines in your flatter tapering banks. So, you know, those clay banks, the isolated rock, the bushes, like I'll be able to throw that thing everywhere. Hence the name Ozark Rig. That was one of the reasons Johnny wanted to call it the Ozark Rig, is because he was fishing it in the Ozarks. And I would argue Lake Eufaula is probably still kind of Ozark Lake. He just liked it because you could throw it everywhere. It didn't matter where he was fishing. Then we've got up this is the Z-Man Chatterbait with a power stinger in that red color that I love so much. Just a great combination. Again, you're talking about off-colored water, a lot of shallow water fishing. potential for a shad spawn, like you kind of got to have a vibrating jig tied up. And I think, if I recall correctly, I think that's what Kelly Jordan won the event on last year. I believe he caught his fish throwing, I don't recall the color. I want to say it was a white one, but he caught them on a vibrating jig. And I'm pretty sure he caught one in the last 5 minutes on the last day that sealed the win for him. But then, yeah, so a major player. And then the last one that I didn't throw last year, but I know a lot of guys were throwing, was a Wobble Head. So this is the Tungsten Swinger Head by Picasso. This is the one, like, I got to say, I love a Wobble Head. I kind of got away from it, and then I found the tungsten version, and I've gotten right back into it. So I think it could be a very good player there. I know a lot of guys were catching good fish on some of those long tapering points. So we'll have that. And then I've got the, what was that? The Berkeley Boss Grub, the 4-inch size Boss Grub in the watermelon red color right there for you. So that's a really good combination. Those are going to be more power fishing. And then I've got my finesse gear, which will be more geared probably towards the clear water. But I've got here a little finesse tush with a 3.3 Kitech swing impact fat on the back. Just a great combination. Last year, that'll be the interesting thing. Last time we were there, I could go down the bank and catch a ton of fish throwing a little swim bait. I could not, though, catch much for size. I mean, when I say size, probably over 2 pounds. But I caught a lot of 1.5-pounders. So I'm really thinking that could be a big player. We'll see. Again, it's one of those things. Every time you think you know what you're going to use when you go to these events, I feel like you throw it out the window and you figure something else out while you're there. Another one I caught a bunch of fish on last year, like I said, was the Hover Rig. But this this has got the little shad impact by Kitech, the little 4-incher on there. I need to replace that one. She's starting to pull through, but there were a lot of fish to be had hanging around docks. There were a lot of fish to be had on some of your break lines, some of your isolated boulders, some of your bridges, like things like that. So that's going to really shine in those circumstances. So I do think that, and when I say the Hover Rig, I've actually fished that more like a Ned rig on this lake. I'm not necessarily saying forward facing sonar. I'd be throwing it and just kind of popping it along the bottom, letting it fall and glide. Just a really good bait for that. And then we've got a Shaky Head, just a tungsten ball Shaky Head with a Zoom trick worm. Just again, another really good bait when you're fishing around rock transitions. If you've got some fish that are potentially spawning, it seems like that could be a good player, I would think. I know a lot of guys caught them on Shaky Heads last time we were there, so I'll have that. And then I've got the Wacky Shot rigged up with a Berkeley Maxcent, the General. This one is one that I was throwing at the last tournament. Still got a little grass mixed in there. Actually, not grass. It's some of that bottom crap that was on the rocks at Dale Hollow. It's like a filament. And I could see that being a good player too. If you get around an area where there's some specific targets to throw it at, that would be one that I'm definitely going to be throwing. So this is one, and I've got a pile of other stuff rigged up too that are kind of one-off things where I could see it being potentially a player. Not a player. I want to get there, see what the water conditions look like. But this is going to be the setup to start. We'll see where it ends up after that. Anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed watching my thought process. Didn't have to order anything from Tackle Warehouse for this. Kind of had everything I thought I would need already. Going to be either one of two ways. Either you finesse fish them and you're fishing more of the clear water, or you end up power fishing them and you're fishing some off-colored water. Not sure which direction we're going to go yet. Got to get there, play around. I would say the first 2 days of practice, I'm going to be running around checking a lot of stuff because Lake Eufaula is a huge lake. And last time I was there, I covered a ton of water and it'll be interesting. We'll see how it goes. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Tournament footage should be coming not too long after this. And hopefully we get out at Lake Eufaula with a good tournament. We need a top 10. That's what we're after. We really need that to help solidify us in points. Thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please hit that subscriber button, hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video, and stay tuned. New video coming out tomorrow.